Hey guys, welcome to an Age of Triumph video. Today we're reviewing the Necrochasm auto rifle, which is the Crota's End raid exotic weapon. The description for this weapon reads, "Eternity is very close. Can you feel yourself slipping?" The exotic perk for this weapon is Cursebringer. Kills with this weapon trigger a cursed thrall explosion. The Necrochasm is earned through a quest that starts when you obtain the Husk of the Pit auto rifle. You obtain the Husk of the Pit from killing ogres. I got mine in this week's Nightfall, the Shadow Thief, where 3 ogres spawn early on. It's a very easy spot to farm. You can just wipe once you've killed the ogres and you can kill them all over again. It seemingly has a very high drop rate, as I have gotten 2 from the 3 Nightfalls I have run this week. Once you've obtained the Husk of the Pit, you want to look at the upgrade note on the weapon, and it will tell you to kill a specific type of hive enemy, either Thrall, Knights, or Wizards. I got Wizards, and to upgrade mine, I went to the Shrine of Oryx mission. A total of 5 wizards spawn throughout this mission. Once you reach the Hall of Wisdom, you want to kill the wizard that spawns in the back of the room, jump off the map, rinse and repeat. You should get the upgrade done in roughly 15 minutes. For Thrall, going to the mission The Dark Beyond is going to be the way to go, and for Knights you can find 3 spawning on the far side of the Hellmouth. Alternatively, you can also find a bunch of Knights in the mission The World's Grave. When you unlock the upgrade node on your Husk of the Pit, it will become the Eidolon ally. Once you've upgraded it, you're gonna head to the tower and talk to the speaker. He's gonna send you on to Eris Mon, who will tell you to defeat Omnigul in the Will of Crota strike, traverse the Abyss, and defeat Crota in the Crota's End raid. Once you've completed this step, Eris will give you an exotic item called the Essence of the Oversoul. Use this to unlock the final node on the Eidolon ally, and there you go, you now have the Necrochasm. Thankfully, there is very little RNG involved in this quest. Only getting the Husk of the Pit to drop initially is reliant on RNG, but it has a pretty generous drop rate overall. The Necrochasm is of course a low impact high rate of fire auto rifle. It comes with the option for Accurized Ballistics, CQB Ballistics, or Aggressive Ballistics. Both Accurized and Aggressive Ballistics will increase the impact of this weapon, whereas CQC Ballistics will give you a nice boost to stability. In PvP, you deal 12 damage to the body no matter what ballistic you choose. But with CQC Ballistics you only deal 15 to the head, whereas both Accurized Ballistics and Aggressive Ballistics will deal 16 damage to the head. In PvE, the difference between these 3 ballistics is a lot more noticeable. Either way, I would recommend running Accurized in both PvE and PvP activities. It has Cascade as an intrinsic perk. Melee kills with this weapon will refill part of this weapon's magazine. It's basically entirely useless in PvP, and it has very limited use in PvE. I really wish they'd switched this perk for something more useful like crowd control or counterbalance that would actually have made this weapon significantly better. The first main perk on the Necrochasm is Zen Moment. Causing damage with this weapon increases stability. I'm generally not a big fan of this perk, but due to the sheer amount of bullets you can fire with the Necrochasm, it actually comes in handy quite often. In the middle column you get the choice between Single Point Sling, Flared Magwell, and Fitted Stock, the latter being my perk of choice. The second main perk is of course Cursebringer. The stats on this weapon are pretty lackluster. With Accurized Ballistics your range stat is only 22, you get 64 stability and a reload stat of 76. Your magazine size is of course 54. Necrochasm also has a base aim assist of 65 and equip speed of 55. Compare this to a Doctrine of Passing and it doesn't look good for the Necrochasm. But the bread and butter of this weapon is of course the exotic perk Cursebringer that has changed with the Age of Triumph. Previously it only procced on precision kills, whereas it now procs on any kill. But is it actually any good? Necrochasm was famous in year 1 for not only being the hardest weapon to obtain, but also being one of the worst exotics in the entire game. And luckily I can say yes, the Necrochasm is now good. But I might as well say it right away, it's good, but it's not great. The Cursebringer explosion is very powerful. In PvP it deals 79 damage to a Guardian. By comparison, Firefly does 61 damage, so it's roughly 20% more powerful than Firefly. Therefore, the Necrochasm is actually really good for dealing with low tier mobs like Thrall and Drex that tend to group together and are more susceptible to the explosive damage. Using the Necrochasm in this week's Nightfall was a blast as I tore through the low tier enemies with ease, and in the Abyss it also proved to be quite useful as the explosions could take out large amounts of Thrall. But there's very limited use for the Necrochasm in the rest of the raid. It's not great for dealing with major enemies, the range on it is horrible, and it just doesn't have enough impact to stagger targets. I know that you generally don't want to use your primary against yellow bar enemies, but sometimes you just don't have a choice, especially with the sheer amount of ads in the Crota's end rate, and that's when the Necrochasm really struggles. In PvE, a high impact weapon is usually better anyway. Handcannons and scout rifles can one-shot most low tier opponents. The Necrochasm really only has the edge when mobs are grouped up, and dealing with these mobs is something that the Fatebringer will be able to do just as fine as well, while also bringing some more stopping power and flinch to major targets. The Necrochasm is one of the most fun exotics for PvE, and it definitely has its use, but it is a niche weapon. I definitely don't consider it top tier. So what about PvP? Well, it's actually surprisingly good in the Crucible. Once again, not a top tier weapon that I would use in Trials of Osiris, but for some casual 6v6, it's not only fun but also relatively effective. As we already know, the stats on the Necrochasm pale in comparison to Doctrine of Passing, so you might be surprised to learn that the Necrochasm is even usable in PvP. The saving grace for the weapon is Accurized Ballistics and Zen Moment. As mentioned earlier, Accurized Ballistics will increase headshot damage for this weapon up to 16, increasing damage by 1 hit point, which may not sound like much, but when the gun is firing at 900 rounds per minute or 15 rounds per second, it suddenly becomes noticeable. You can theoretically put out 15 more damage per second with an Accurized Ballistics Necrochasm than any other low impact auto rifle. It may not sound like much, but 15 damage is essentially the difference of 1 bullet, which can absolutely be a difference maker in a gunfight. You obviously sacrifice stability for this, but that's where Zen Moment comes into the picture. Can you land the first couple of shots on target, the recoil becomes very manageable. Zen Moment stacks up to 5 times and can buff your stability by as much as 67%. How exactly this works, I'm not sure, but in theory this means that your base stability of 64 will get maxed out once you've landed 5 hits on target. Therefore, it's crucial that you land the first shot on your opponent. It's actually preferable to go for body shots first just to make sure you're on target to proc Zen Moment, but once Zen Moment is in full effect, this gun is a melt machine. It's easy to land a string of headshots, making it quite solid for dueling. The main drawback to this is you need to proc Zen Moment while you're in a gunfight, and while 5 bullets may not sound like much, it does have some pretty violent kick, meaning that you're likely gonna miss a few shots, which can end up costing you in a gunfight. And even with Zen Moment, it doesn't have the raw time to kill of a hand cannon. If you're up against a hand cannon user, you have to get the first shot on them, or otherwise hope that they miss a few shots and rely on the forgiving nature of Necrochasm's high fire rate to come out on top. But if they hit their shots, you're dead to rights. Overall, the Necrochasm works quite well in 6v6 and Rumble, where you're almost always shooting opponents and proccing Zen Moment, but in 3v3 and elimination game modes in particular, I really can't justify using this in your exotic slot. It's not as reliable at close range as a hand cannon is, and it can't quite compete with pulse rifles at a distance. You're much better off using a legendary primary and saving your exotic slot for the Icebreaker or even the Trespasser. But no matter if you use the Necrochasm in PvP or PvE, it is definitely one of the most fun weapons to use. It's a good weapon, not a great weapon, but who cares if it's not the most meta weapon ever when it's just so incredibly satisfying to see your opponents go out in a Thrall explosion. In PvE, the exotic perk is actually quite useful, but you will rarely ever get any use from Cursebringer in PvP. But I don't know about you guys, but I'm a sucker for explosions. I will use a weapon with Firefly in PvP, not because Firefly is really good, because it's not, but because it's just so satisfying to see those explosions. And Necrochasm is no different. This weapon is all about the fun factor, and that's where it excels. So that is my review of the Necrochasm. I hope you all enjoyed and found it helpful. Let me know what you think about the Necrochasm in the comments section below, and I will catch you guys on my next video.